So Saturday was the big day. Saturday was the March for Medicare for All, day of action for single payer in this country. And the exact number, I have to get the exact number and go city by city. I haven't had time to do it since. I've been very busy. But originally the plan was 50 cities across the country. I'm hearing it was 40 plus cities. I'll get you the exact number. But I went out to the event that was happening here in Tampa. It was actually organized by somebody who is a big supporter of the show, Isabel. So shout out to her. And like I said, it was probably the biggest day of action for single payer I've seen. All over the country, they were huge, not huge, but decent size events. In LA, was pretty big. A couple hundred people out in LA on Saturday. Jimmy Dore was speaking, Jackson Hinkle, Fiorella from the Convo Couch, a bunch of people out there in LA. In Chicago, Heartlands Media was out there. New York, Susan Sarandon, famous activist and actress. Marianne Williamson was out in DC. So it was an honor for me to be invited out to come out to one of these events with such great and popular activists. But most of all, I want to give a huge shout out and huge credit to all of the organizers and all the activists who made that day of action happen. And like I said on Twitter, let this be the first successful day of action out of many, many more to come. So it was a very good experience. I talked to a lot of people out there, and honestly, I'm gonna do a whole separate video about what that experience was like for me and some of my takeaways and how I think like these sort of direct actions and day of actions, like how it could be improved going forward. So I'm going to do an entirely separate video on that. But I would like to say that I spoke to almost everybody who was out at the Tampa event, and everybody had their own reasons, their own legitimate reasons for coming out there. But something that was a very common thread among everybody who was out there, either they heard about it through social media or somebody they know heard about it through social media and told them and invited them to come out. So that goes to show you that what happens on social media, it's real people having conversations, real people having dialogue on social media that can amount to real things. And I think that's an important takeaway that everybody should have after this day of action. But like I said, I'm going to do an entirely separate video on that. So as you can tell by the topic of this video, this is a response to the real focus of this video is going to be a response to Kyle's commentary on the march, because yes, he did about a 17-minute video on the day of action that happened this Saturday, but he spent about 3 minutes complimenting the activists and the organizers, and then after that spent the rest of the video doing this bullshit false equivalency, basically saying the people who were out there in the streets at the marches fighting for single payer in the middle of a pandemic and who were shitting on the Justice Democrats and Nina Turner, he was basically trying to say they're as dumb and as unproductive, as counterproductive as the same people who were shitting on Forced to Vote were also on Twitter and elsewhere, social media, shitting on the activists and the organizers while they were in the streets protesting for single payer. He was doing this bullshit false equivalency for the rest of the entire video, basically trying to like say they're both as toxic as each other, and it was really ridiculous. But what I found, what took me over the top and made me have to do this video in response, is the extremely disingenuous defense of these shitty politicians. And the fact that he literally, in this entire video, didn't even once mention that or criticize that almost none of the elected progressives showed up. The only one that did show up was Cori Bush. She showed up for a photo op, and it was completely disingenuous, and it was bullshit. And I'll get to that in a minute. But he completely leaves out in this whole 17-minute video where he spends half of it ripping activists in the streets. He completely leaves out the fact that Bernie Sanders, the person who so-called championed Medicare for all, didn't have a fucking word to say about multiple city day of action across the entire country, one of the biggest days of actions for single payer I can ever recall. And Bernie Sanders didn't have a fucking word to say about it. He didn't show up at a single event, and neither did almost anybody else except for Cori Bush, and I'll get to that in a minute. Kyle did an entire video on the marches and conveniently leaves that part out, leaves out any criticism of their complete absence on this after the many times they failed to fight on this issue of single payer in the very recent past. So honestly, I have no other way to describe that other than completely being disingenuous, because there's no way he was sitting down and being honest and said and didn't think that was worthy of commentary when he commented on a bunch of other shit that really seemed petty in comparison to that giant contradiction to his philosophy of we need to defend these politicians at all costs. So first, he defends Nina Turner for not showing up and basically takes her at face value, this bullshit excuse she gave for not showing up, which is completely, like I said, is bullshit. And it doesn't really excuse, it doesn't explain why she didn't even mention the march, didn't acknowledge its existence, even though people who've been organizing this for months in advance have been contacting her. From the very beginning, they've been contacting her and contacting members of her campaign, trying to get them on board with this. And they haven't said a word about it, they haven't acknowledged it, they haven't promoted it. But Kyle conveniently leaves all that out and finds no fault with Nina Turner. Not only completely ignoring this historic day of action, but holding her own separate campaign event for her own self-promotion to divert attention and divert people from getting into the streets for Medicare for all and talking about Medicare for all on that historic day. Completely finds no fault in her at all. And then, so that's going to be one clip I show, the first clip I show. And then after that, he adds to this dog pile on this independent journalist who was at the DC event where Cori Bush showed up, and he was the only one to ask her about forced to vote while she was there, which is completely relevant because, one, they've been dodging questions on forced to vote since it happened. And like, this is going to be something that we just forget about. And because, like I said, it contradicts the entire core of this strategy of we need to elect them. So when they have the opportunities to fight to advance our policy agenda in Congress, we have somebody who agrees with us and is going to fight for us and make our case. The force to vote moment completely contradicts that, because when they had the numbers to force to vote on Medicare for all in a pandemic, they were the ones who were coming out and telling people it's a bad time to force to vote on it and it's a bad idea. So they were the ones who opposed the floor vote on Medicare for all. And up until this point, none of these people, none of these so-called progressives, but really a bunch of neoliberals, none of them have had to answer for how they're running on Medicare for all and refuse to force a vote on it. None of them have had to answer for that. And I don't care if it's 6 months later, 7 months later. I don't care if it's 10 years fucking later. Somebody needs to make them answer for that. So this independent journalist was in front of Cori Bush and took it upon himself to ask the question. And when he did, people were shitting on him for it. Because apparently, Cori Bush just showing up for a photo op means she is now off limits and nobody was allowed to criticize her because we need to learn how to take yes for an answer. And people were mad at tone policing him because he literally just asked her about force to vote. And they thought it was too antagonistic and it was too mean and it would hurt her feelings and it would make her so that she wouldn't want to ever come out to another event again. So people were shitting on a journalist for rightfully being adversarial to these politicians who've left us for dead. And Kyle, first of all, Jordan Sheridan and Jen Dyes from Status Quo were mocking this journalist and calling him a fucking clown or whatever because he asked her about that, and that stirred up this whole other controversy. And now Kyle also mentioned this in his video, completely mischaracterizes the situation, and again defending the politicians over the journalists, over people in the streets demanding them to do their fucking job. So both of those instances were gross. I'll play both those clips for you. But first, you already know the deal. If you're able to contribute to the show, I have links to Patreon in the About page and in the description box. You can sign up, do monthly subscriptions. I don't really have anything behind the paywall. It's just a way to help support the show. If you'd rather do a one-time contribution, I have a link to PayPal in the description box. I also have links to GoFundMe for equipment to upgrade the quality of the show. And as always, I'm incredibly grateful for all the people who keep showing up, watching the videos, commenting on the videos, and yes, I read all the comments on the videos. All the people I met at the event who are now subscribing and watching the show. I'm incredibly grateful for all of you. So now I'm going to play the clip from Kyle. I'm going to play the first one about Nina Turner, and I'm going to just make some quick comments on that, try to keep it brief, and then I'll play the other clip where he talks about Cori Bush and does this ridiculous defense of Cori Bush against legitimate questions from journalists.
The other criticism was, well, you know, a lot of what was going on in these rallies is people were like dumping on Nina Turner, for example, because I guess Nina Turner was invited, but she already was doing a campaign event for her race. By the way, the election is coming up very soon for Ohio's 11th district. So her and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez were rallying for Nina Turner, and I guess some people who were part of this march were going after Nina Turner and saying, like, how dare you have an event that conflicts with the Medicare for All march? And so people were using that to go after her. I mean, my personal opinion on that is that I don't believe for a second that Nina Turner is against Medicare for All. I think she's one of the most profound and aggressive advocates for that policy. So I do think that people who are involved in the march who would use it to sort of go after our best congresspeople in ways that are inaccurate, I wouldn't do that because that is strategically silly. And it's also just not true. So you have to build coalitions when it comes to getting things like this accomplished. And to be a very like insular, angry, niche subgroup is you're not doing yourself any favors. In fact, you're hurting yourself. So to the extent that there was anybody who was making that argument, and maybe there were, but I think it's a tiny, tiny, tiny percentage of the people who were involved in the march, I would say, relax, breathe, it's okay. Nina Turner, it would be one of our biggest champions, and everybody better go vote for her.
Again, look at the framing there. And look at how he literally is being a stenographer for politicians, because somebody in Nina Turner's campaign said that what do you know, we're double booked that day, can't show up, can't acknowledge the Medicare for All march at all. Whoops. Maybe next time. Again, and this is just another example in this continuous pattern of them refusing to do what is necessary and refusing to engage in direct action or refusing to fight for Medicare for All even a little bit. This is just the latest example. But again, Kyle acts like none of this shit that happened before. Water off a duck's back. None of that shit existed. None of that shit ever happened. And it's just a clean slate, and they all get the benefit of the doubt like nothing ever happened. And somebody at Nina Turner's campaign told them they were double booked, and it was just scheduling conflict. That's why they didn't show up. So, and he takes that at face value and doesn't even apply an ounce of skepticism. Not even once did he say, really, that's mighty convenient, because then you also, what was the excuse for not coming out for forced to vote? What was the excuse for not applying any pressure during the stimulus bill? It just seems like Nina Turner refuses to challenge Democratic leadership and refuses to actually come out in any kind of adversarial position. And this isn't just me saying it. This is what her own campaign advisor, Jeff Weaver, has told the press. He has told them that he's advising Nina Turner to not take an adversarial approach to the Biden administration, to the Democratic leadership. And that is what is manifest. And Kyle doesn't imply any of that skepticism. He just says, oh, that's what they say, so it must be true. Again, they've all been lying about why they aren't fighting for Medicare for all. They've all been lying. They've literally said that having a vote on it is going to be bad for the movement. That's how much they're lying about this shit. So, I mean, to take any of their word at face value anymore is beyond naive. You're being obtuse on purpose and ignoring all of the relevant context. But he doesn't bring that up, and he also, like I said, doesn't mention the fact that no other politician showed up. No other politician acknowledged the March for Medicare for All. None of these other politicians acknowledged this historic day of action for single payer in the middle of a pandemic. So it's so mighty convenient that Nina Turner also had a scheduling conflict, and that's what led her to not show up or not to even acknowledge it, just like every other politician in the country. Isn't that funny? Isn't that convenient? And then the other part that just doesn't add up to the story from the Nina Turner campaign is like I said earlier, activists have been contacting her campaign for months. I have heard it from the activists directly. I have seen the receipts. I've seen the messages. I've seen the emails. I've seen them trying to get in contact with Nina Turner and her campaign, and they have been ignoring them. They have been ignoring them. And it's not just randos who've never, ever had in contact. Like Savage Joy Marie, she's previously worked with Nina Turner and had contact with Nina Turner. She's been on Nina Turner's show, and Nina Turner had her on her show. She was one of the organizers for this event. She's been contacting Nina Turner and her team, and nobody will acknowledge the march. So, and this has been going on for months. Months before AOC and Nina Turner announced this event. So, the simple timeline there shows this was going on before they knew about it. I know for a fucking fact they knew about it. And then they scheduled this event with AOC on the same exact day. So the timeline busts up this whole myth about a scheduling conflict. It looked like they on purpose scheduled this so that they to excuse them not showing up for the march. That's what it looks like. Again, none of this calculates to Kyle Kulinski's analysis. Just the Nina Turner campaign says so it has to be true. I'm just a stenographer for power. Just like I criticize CNN for doing all the time. But now it's my favorite politician, and when they say something, it's 100% true. And the people in the streets, they're the ones who are full of shit, and they're the ones who deserve some stern talking to. Not Nina Turner, who's running on Medicare for All and refused to acknowledge this day of action. And then look at what he does here. This little, I've noticed he does this a lot, where he just asserts something that he believes as if it's fact, and just because he believes it, now that's substitutes an actual argument where he has to make points and debunk the points that other people are making. He just boldly asserts, he says, yeah, well, some people were criticizing Nina Turner. Didn't mention why they were criticizing, the litany of reasons why they were criticizing Nina Turner at this event. Just said they were criticizing her because she dared to have an event. Again, that's a real charitable way to frame this. She didn't just dare to have an event on the same day. She on purpose scheduled this event after ignoring these activists and these organizers for months. On purpose scheduled this event that diverted attention from a Medicare for All event in her state. That's what she did. But again, he frames it in that weird way. And then instead of using actual evidence and making actual factual points on as to why the people who were criticizing her were wrong, he just says, I don't believe for a second that Nina Turner doesn't support Medicare for All. What are you just going to ignore all the legitimate reasons? Where were you on forced to vote? Where have you been? She refuses to criticize the Biden administration 6 months into this pandemic. He has authority to grant everybody single payer with the stroke of a pen. Where's Nina Turner calling for him to do that? Where's Nina Turner calling for Medicare for All in the infrastructure bill as part of the infrastructure package? She's not doing any of those things. She's not fighting for Medicare for All, and that's why people at the rallies were criticizing her. But again, completely swats all that aside. None of that matters because Kulinski believes that she supports Medicare for all. So that's the end of the debate, I guess. I guess that's the end of the debate. All right, so this next clip is about the whole dust up about Cori Bush showing up, really for a photo op, just so that to muddy the waters, because that's all she really wanted to do. Just so anybody who talks about this now has to add the caveat. Well, at least Cori Bush showed up. She didn't show up to actually support. She wasn't in support of the event, because if she was in support, she would have used her massive platform and her massive reach and her ability to go on cable news and her ability to draw an audience wherever the fuck she goes and in front of a microphone. She would have used her Twitter account. She would have used her platform to promote the event, to get more people to show out to the event. That's what she would have done to support it. But she didn't. She showed up for a fucking photo op just so that there's a picture of her there so that people can't just say she didn't do shit for Medicare for all, which is exactly what it is. So she goes for a photo op, and then now people like Kyle Kulinski and Jordan Sheridan are going to browbeat and tone police people because they had the audacity to ask her about forced to vote while she was at a Medicare for all event. Because apparently to them, her showing up means she's immune from any criticisms of all of the shit that the Justice Democrats have been pulling over the last few months. So I'll play that clip now.
Another criticism was in regards to Cori Bush. Cori Bush showed up to one of these events, and then you had, some angry, disgruntled person at one of the events who was basically, I guess you could say, screaming at Cori Bush or calling out Cori Bush and basically saying, like, where were you on force the vote? You were nowhere to be found. So basically sort of trying to make it seem like she's an enemy. Guys, I mean, the reason she showed up to the march is because she believes in Medicare for all and she wants to show support. So for her to then do the right thing and then you attack her for, what, not doing the right thing sooner? I mean, that's a little context dense. This is, if you want to really win people over, to be your ally and to fight arm in arm with you, you don't look at something they do that's positive and then give them shit for something that they previously did that's negative. People need to realize how to deal with people who we consider enemies versus people who we consider imperfect allies. Now, I would argue for sure Cori Bush is an imperfect ally, but I mean, I guess there are some people who would seriously argue that no, she's an enemy. But to those people, I'd say, good luck ever getting anything done ever at all, because if that is your mindset, if Cori Bush isn't pure enough to make it into the coalition, then there is literally nobody who's going to make it into the coalition to actually get anything like Medicare for all or even a public option implemented. So I want to win, and I want people to be strategic while also being principled. And, there was another thing where people were saying to Cori Bush, effectively, why didn't you tweet anything about the March for Medicare for All? Why weren't you more prominent in promoting it? And it's, again, it's a very aggressive, you're the enemy kind of tone. And I would just caution everybody involved with the march. We want to build coalitions and get people on our side and make everybody feel welcome. And the more you do that, the less that's likely to happen. So I just think it's strategically unintelligent, and I also think you've lost the plot if you really believe that some of the few Congress people who are on our side, even if they didn't do what we tactically want, if they're on our side and we know they're on our side and the record shows they're on our side and we've already won them over on the policy, well then, as the old saying goes, there's bigger fish to fry. You should be going after the corporate Democrats who are sort of on the fence. Remember, the original pressure campaign got the number of co-sponsors for Medicare for All. I forget the exact number, so forgive me, but it was like maybe a dozen people supported John Conyers' Medicare for All bill, and then we got it to over 100. Now, we had that happen because you guys put pressure, made phone calls, but then also took yes for an answer when we got yes for an answer. So again, my argument would be, if you're part of a movement, you have to be intelligent, you have to be strategic, and you have to build coalitions, and you have to be willing to take yes for an answer. Don't cast our closest allies, who admittedly are imperfect allies, but don't make them the enemy, because then again, you're going to run into a brick wall at 100 miles an hour and wonder why the hell we weren't able to get anything done at all.
First of all, he completely misrepresented the what happened, and I'll link to the video on Twitter in the description box of this video. But it was a journalist who asked her a question. Nobody was screaming and shouting and whatever the fuck he was trying to misrepresent it as. And even if they were, who gives a fuck? Stop with the tone policing. She's a politician. She made a calculated decision to not force single payer in the middle of a pandemic. That, by definition, that means more people are going to die. And we'll have to wait even longer to get single payer in this country. So you're damn right people are going to be mad enough to yell. So if people were yelling at her, I don't know why you're still choosing to browbeat them instead of criticizing the politicians who are failing. But that's not even what happened. It was a journalist who simply asked her about forced vote. And what do you know? Surprise, people in new media, they're supposed to be independent media, adversarial media, they're mad that a journalist took an adversarial tone towards shitty politicians who are utterly failing at their job. And like I said, because she showed up and now it gives her a shield, a pass, and she has immunity from any past criticism on her indefensible, inexcusable behavior when it came to forced vote. And then he literally tried to hit us with we're now with the purity test. So Kyle Kulinski, who famously said, I do have purity tests, and one of them is Medicare for all. Now he's going around and saying that the people who are calling out politicians for not actually fighting on Medicare for all, now we're the ones who have a purity test, and it's nobody can never pass it. Oh, what do you know? Isn't it convenient how that works? Anytime anybody shows that they have standards that put your favorite politician on the wrong side of the line, oh, well, now we're going to bitch and moan about purity tests, and nobody can ever live up to your high expectations. But here's the thing. Nobody is saying, like, you need to make water out of wine or any type of shit like that, and, like, those are our purity tests. I'm going to speak for myself here. A politician who ran on Medicare for all had the opportunity to force a vote on Medicare for all, and then they actually forced a vote on Medicare for all. You know, that person went past my purity test. And you know who didn't do that? Cori Bush didn't do that. So therefore, she didn't pass my purity test, and therefore, she's not meeting the bare minimum standards. So, like, this idea of, now because Cori Bush is excluded, as if Cori Bush is like the premier example of what a politician should be, and if she can't meet anybody's standards, then that means nobody can meet those standards. No, there are plenty of people that I know who wouldn't have folded and voted for Nancy Pelosi for no goddamn reason. I got absolutely nothing in return, squandering the best and the most prime leverage that the movement has had in my lifetime to get any type of policy demands. There are many people I know who wouldn't have folded like that, so they would be better suited to be politicians than Cori Bush. But this thing like, Cori Bush is a Justice Democrat, and he's talking about people being context dense. Kyle there is being context dense and just, like I said, completely leaving out all of the shit that these Justice Democrats have done to make people question them, and specifically on this issue of Medicare for all, where they refuse to fight for it even in the pandemic. That for many people, that's enough to say, all right, that's it, I'm done. Let's wrap this up. I want nothing to do with this, because clearly this is just another extension of the neoliberal incrementalism that the Democratic Party has been serving up for the last 40 years, and I want nothing to do with it. So that part's annoying, and this whole like, we have to be nicer to these politicians. I mean, I'm so tired of seeing this, and I'm so tired of making this fucking responding to this ridiculous argument. It's not like I'm asking them a favor. It's not like I got a flat tire and I'm calling up Cori Bush like in the dead of night, like, yo, can you just you have a spare? Can you come out and put it on my car real quick? Yeah, I got a flat. I'm not asking them a favor. They all raised over $270 million, like I wrote in the Substack article. They've all raised over $270 million, begged for endless amount of volunteer hours and blood, sweat, and tears to get themselves elected because they promised to fight on this very issue. and then immediately after they get elected, they abandon the issue. What the fuck do you mean I have to be nice to them to get them to do what they ran on? When has it ever been the expectation? A politician lied to you to get your vote, and now you have to be nice to them so that they can do what the fuck they ran on? Honestly, I'm having a hard time believing anybody's making this argument in good faith. Because there's no way you believe that shit. There's no way you believe that's how politics works. And again, then he's tone policing about people criticizing Cori Bush because she didn't promote it. What the fuck is the problem here? Like, and again, I'm having a really hard time, and you guys know I'm not quick to go to the, oh, this person's lying point of view, but it really comes off like he's being obtuse on purpose. Because, again, the bare fucking minimum for people who ran their entire campaigns on this issue, when a fucking 50-city day of action is going on, the bare fucking minimum you can do is completely do nothing to promote it, do nothing to get people out, and then show up and take pictures there. That's the bare fucking minimum you can do to stave off pitchforks and torches outside of your office for being a fucking lying charlatan. That's the bare fucking minimum. And then now that people, I'm glad that people are wising up and not being falling for the bullshit of their all the performative theater that they do and to keep pretending like they're on your side. I'm glad people are asking for more and demanding more. So people are rightfully saying, well, why didn't you promote it? That is a completely legitimate question. If Cori Bush would have promoted, arguably, and doing on mainstream media, doing radio, doing TV, going anywhere, any crowd she would get in front of, promoting these events that were going to be happening across the country, and then got the other Justice Democrats to do the same, that would have had a huge impact on the turnout. And furthermore, that is one of the reasons why we elected them, because they said that they were going to organize and they said that they were going to mobilize people. So when the time came to do that, yet again, they refused to do it, and then she's going to show up for this cynical photo op, and so that to muddy the waters, like I said before. And then now Kyle is literally saying it's off limits to criticize her for anything. And he's literally said the problem is the tone that comes across when you say it. Why are you being mean to people? Take yes for an answer. Literally what he's saying. So because she did the bare fucking minimum, which really isn't the bare minimum, the bare fucking minimum would have been doing everything you can to maximize turnout on an issue that you ran on. But she just shows up for a photo op, and now people like Jordan Sheridan, Jen Dyes, and Kyle Kulinski think that they are above reproach, and they're going to come out and act like the Cori Bush Defense League when people are calling her out for forced to vote or asking questions about forced to vote and asking why you aren't promoting this event. They're going to come out as the Cori Bush Defense League and tone police us. Tone police the people without who've been left for dead by these politicians. And defend these shitty politicians. That's what Kyle Kulinski's doing now. So there's a video. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section, because this obviously irked the shit out of me.